We're continuing our series here, The Kingdom in Luke. Last year we had the good fortune of getting through the entire Gospel of Matthew over the course of about a year and a half. And this year we are going to be going through all of Luke, finishing it up by our Advent series, where we'll jump into our next Gospel interspersed here and there. But we are looking at all of these unique passages that only Luke gives us throughout his Gospel to kind of see what is it Luke is driving towards us to understand a little bit about Jesus, who Jesus is, and what his particular bend on this story is going to tell us. I did hit record. That was the question I had. I hit it. We're good. So if you would, we're going to look today, continuing forward just a little bit, at Luke 5, looking at this passage. So if you're ready, let's set the stage and walk our way through this interesting story. The sun is just starting to rise up on the Lake of Gennesaret. Early in the morning, it just begun to show through the blades of grass on the shoreline and the crevices and the hills and valleys on the horizon. Jesus, who already somehow was standing near the edge of the shore with sands between his toes, and the cool water of the late morning begins to roll in and out, pushing the sand around his feet. Just one lonely-looking figure standing on the western bank of the sea, but he wasn't lonely for long, as Luke often paints Jesus, because people were beginning to discover and find out who he was, how he healed, how he talked. Rumors of the previous encounter at his hometown where he vanished without a trace from the cliff's edge. And so they gather on the hillside, kind of like an amphitheater, to hear what he has to say. And they gather more and more and more and more. As the word continued to get around that Jesus was here, everybody and their brother was on the way. And they were fitting in as tight as they could and began to crush and push in around themselves. And he was against the cool air of the sea, but the warm, bated breaths of this expectant crowd that had pushed him even closer and closer to standing knee-deep in the water. This is probably the reason Jesus looked for a boat to get into. There was a trepidation of the force of the crowd backing him right into the sea. So the only location he could really look for any assistance were the rickety fishing boats that were pulling in from their evening of fishing. These weren't extravagant yachts, but hulls worn down from years of late-night fishing trips to support a family. Water stains up the side marking great catches and nights of empty nets. The owners, the fishermen that had already been up all night fishing, were sitting already begrudgingly cleaning their nets and tying where they had broken from a night with no success. There weren't any fish to clean. There weren't any to rescue from the tightly woven netting, just some scraps of tangled vegetation, which were piling up next to the boats as well. A stinky reminder of a night of failure. Jesus looked over to these men, Simon and James and John, and asked them if they could push their boats a little bit farther out in the water so he could stand on it and teach to this crowd that had gathered on the shoreline. Because at this point, they had pushed so far, he was standing waist deep in the water. So they push out their boats, and he gets in and he teaches from the boat. Luke doesn't tell us what he taught them. Maybe it's a parable that we already know from some other teaching. Maybe we don't know what he said. When it was over, the crowd begins to scatter to head back to their homes. And the men who had been up all night fishing got back their boats to the shoreline, but that was when Jesus told them to stop. So the warm wind of the morning was beginning to blow in over the hills, and the sun was now completely up over the horizon. It lit up the waters with a ray of warm sunlight. And he said, "Put the boat back out over there where the sun is hitting and let down your nets and we'll have a nice catch." Now, I am really sorry to say that the writer of Luke and the editors that put this thing together didn't put in there what Peter probably said, because we only get two little sentences that Peter gives us of his response to a ridiculous request. We can assume he probably had something to say other than the two that we got from Luke. The first one he said, right, is, we've worked all night long, and we haven't caught anything. Well, that's just the beginning. What he should have said is probably something more like this. That, Jesus, did you notice the other fishermen have already come in as well on the banks, that they're all done? And you see what they're doing? They're washing their nets. Why? Because they're through. They're pros. Maybe you don't understand how fishing works, but professional fishermen, we don't fish when the sun's up, The sun, you see, it's over the hill, it's that big flaming ball over there. That tells us when we stop fishing. That's not when you start. See, we fish at night. Fish, they don't see the nets in the water at night. In the daylight, they can see the nets. They know how to avoid them. And so despite what you think maybe about fish, they don't actually want to get caught. So they swim around the nets when they can see them. And so with the sun up, we're all done. We were actually finished before you told us to go back in the water. We cleaned the boat, we cleaned the nets, and then we got to go back out for that, for this crowd. And really, again, beside the point, we're tired, we fished all night, no good conditions, we didn't catch anything. There's just no fish out there to be had. I don't really want to get into the diatribe of fishing in dark in general, but, it's not... Anyway, we're done, and then you interrupted us. And then I think he had to have said something like, I'll tell you what, you're good at talking. I sat in the boat, you talked to these people, you're a good talker. They like your stories. And I'm a fisherman, I'm a pro, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you a deal, Jesus. You stick to talking, and I'll stick to fishing. Then we'll be pals. We'll be good about it. But we only hear his minor objection, right? We don't get the whole diatribe. He says, we've looked all night, we fished, we didn't catch anything. And then we get his second one. But if you say so, we'll go out and let the nets down. So the boats putter their way back out to the deep part of the lake, and sitting in the ray of sunshine in the clear blue water, Simon, James, and John grab a hold of their fishing nets, and they fling them out around the boat. And before the nets even had begun to settle into the water fully, they were being dragged to the very bottom of the sea by the sheer weight and willpower of the number and size of fish that suddenly found themselves trapped in this net. Despite the fact that it was daytime, they start rushing the boat from all sides. I don't even think some of them waited for the nets to hit the water. I think some of them just started jumping up into the boat, like these Japanese carp in Kentucky. But soon the strain was too much for the ropes and the bindings and the cleats that the nets were tied onto. They began to fray and tear under sudden immense pressure that they had never seen before. And so Peter yells from his boat to bring another boat over to begin to assist with the sheer amount of fish that have suddenly been caught up in these nets. And as soon as the other boat approached, the fish started leaping from the water into that boat as well and sinking it underneath the weight of these fish. Each boat was now sitting nearly underwater with this miraculous catch, racing towards the shore before they would be completely submerged by this ridiculous fishing expedition. Well, it's about that time that Jesus is looking around for for Peter here. And where is he? Standing and kneeling beneath Jesus on the shore. And he looks up to him. Do you remember what he says to him? He says, "Go away." Why would he say that? You know what Simon should have said? Instead of being on his knees telling Jesus to go away, he should have been giving him a big bear hug. There's a coffee shop just down the road for the two of them, and we could go sit there, you and me, Jesus. We could sit, have a little brew. I know we've got a future together. I don't know if you know this or not. I've got boats and nets and friends, and you know where the fish are. We've got a future together. We've got a future. Well, that's not what he says. He says, "Go away." It's the biggest catch anyone had ever seen. What's incredible, it's such a success. It's it's so much. It's too much. It's too much success. Did you hear me? It's too much success. It's over the top. Do you know what I mean? It's like an episode of like the X-Files, right? There's just too many fish. This doesn't actually make any sense. It's too much. It's too much to handle for two boats. There's too many fish for Peter and these people's mind to understand. They can't understand how there's this many fish. And I've talked about this before, but when you get really close to the holy, when you get a little too close to the mystery, when you just get a little bit too close, things start to come unglued at the seams. It's too much for Peter. There's too much. It was wonderful, right? It was wonderful, as in wonder. You ready? We'll do this. We're going to do this again. It's wonderful, as in wonder. Oh, it's marvelous, as in marvel. It's terrific, as in terrify. It's too much. It's too much. It's not the only time in the scriptures that we get this occurrence of what happens when you just get a little too close to something so holy. You get a little too close to the mystery. In Isaiah 6, the best representation of this, I've talked about it, but it's the best one. You remember Isaiah, he has this vision of God on the high and the most holy God, and he says in this vision, he says, I see the hem of the garment of God was so big, it filled the entirety of the temple. And I saw the Lord on high lifted up, and it filled everything. And so Isaiah, he grabs his cell phone, and he stands behind it to get a picture of the hem of the garment so that he can tell his grandchildren, he can show them the picture, go, this was the hem of God's garment. I want my grandkids to see it. Right? No. That's not what he did. Do you remember what he says? The first thing he says upon seeing it is, woe. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among those who have unclean lips. Do you hear it? It's too much. It's just too much. This phrase is this phrase I've talked about before, this mysterium tremendum. First of all, the thing with it is that two things happen. It lures you in. It's like a magnet that lures you into its orbit. And then it also pulls you away. You're lured in and you're pulled away. You want to reach out and touch. You want to be a part of it. But it also repels away. It's too much. It's too much. It's too pretty. It's too whatever. You just want to be a part of it. But you can't. It's too much. There are organizations that try to create this special place and event, all kinds of devices that people use in order to create this mysterium tremendum in places where it doesn't exist. Churches sometimes try to do this. We're going to manufacture this experience. But I think of the best example I can ever think of at a church that I worked at before. There was someone who owned a karate studio. And I went to a karate thing one time, and it's the perfect representation of manufactured mysterium tremendum. They're attempting to create this space that's like, it's got to draw you in. It's this, it's too much. You've ever been to a karate tournament thing before? You've been in one? No? They've got a mat in there. Guess who can go on the mat? Only people that do the thing. And you can't go on the mat with shoes. Got to go on without your shoes. Take your shoes off, go on the mat. And they turn, and before they do anything, they recite their creed together. And these are the things that we will hold true. There's this air of the mat is this mysterious. You with me? It's the same thing in Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, advancing up, getting badges. You're manufacturing the sense that there is something holy about this space. But we know innately that the difference between Girl Scouts, karate, and this experience and Isaiah's experience are different. See, in those you get the reward because you had it coming. You worked hard, you snapped a board with your fist, or you helped a lady cross the street, and you get the badge for whatever, you built fire and without, I don't know all of them. But it was coming. You did the job. You do better and you move up a belt. Well, just think about this. What did Simon Peter bring to this exchange of the miraculous catch of fish? Nothing. Empty nets, really. Scared hands. And that's the difference. Do you see why he told Jesus to go away? It's no wonder that the thing Jesus says to him is, "Don't be afraid." Because he was. He was afraid. And as they brought the boats back, they didn't even think they'd be able to make it back to shore. So you can hear Jesus say to them, I'm gonna do something even crazier. I'm gonna lead you into even deeper waters. Really deep ones. And from now on, instead of dragging in fish, you'll be fishing people. And then they turned and they walked away with Jesus. But that's not where I think Luke wants to look. Because take a peek at Peter and Jesus and James and John. They're walking over there. Look up, but I want you to look over here. Okay, look right here on the shoreline. You with me? Look over here. At the edge of the water on the beachfront. Do you see it there? 2 boats? More fish than they can possibly hold. Dropping off the sides of the hull. So many. The best catch they've ever had. Probably an enormous profit in terms of sale. I mean, it was too much. And the people were gather around the boats, you know. But the owners aren't there to brag. Because they've abandoned it. They abandoned the profit. They abandoned the fish to leave it to rot and stink. Why? Why? How could Simon Peter and James and John leave this pile? How? The best catch that's ever been caught with any of their equipment. How could they do it? And there's really only one reason that they could do it, and that's when Peter said, "Go away." Jesus didn't go away. And he wouldn't go away, no matter how unworthy Peter would end up being. He doesn't go away. No matter how undeserving anybody may think they are. You can say go away, but he doesn't. And that's what he said from now on. I have to always admit in brutal honesty with myself and you that there are so many times in my own journey, my own thoughts, my own experience through ministry work that I am significantly more like foot and mouth Peter than anybody else. That I obviously know the best. And that I have done the work, and I've let the results of it hamper my mood and sulk and pout about it. But in an exact instance, I'm often reminded of the question that people asked me when I felt leaving full-time paid ministry work with benefits and a retirement account to come and do something that was completely unpaid that I thought was important. That why in the world would you do that now? Why now? You just had a baby who's now 5, crazy. You're in school paying off your master's degree and starting another degree. You're building a house. What are you doing? What are you doing? And what I've come to realize about it is that despite what anyone wants to tell you, Jesus doesn't make any sense. You don't go fishing when the sun's up. You fish at night. We're often asked into doing something ridiculous. Finding the excuses that our timing is wrong, that we're exhausted from the things we've already been doing, that there's just not a market for this sort of thing right now. The fish aren't biting, and they really won't ever be. And that leads us to the crossroads Peter encounters. Does our complaint at a call to us to believe that we're right, that the timing is wrong, that we know better, that we pulled our boats back into shore, we've gone ahead and ripped up the application? Or do we come at it with trepidation and terror? That because you say so, I will follow. So we've all said yes to some endeavor that for anyone looking from the outside they would say is absolutely crazy. But because you say so, we follow. All of us are called into some aspect of the kingdom, of doing ministry. I say this so many times, I don't actually have answers for things. My favorite thing to say is, I don't know. Isn't that just the best, that I don't have to know everything? It's big. It's hard to understand all of it, and I'm always trying to be as honest. That's why we've talked about this one another community, with the Teach One Another, that all of us bring something to this. All of us are called into doing some form of ministry work for the kingdom, whether it's playing piano, whether it's making coffee, whether it's clicking through slides, whether it's just staying after and helping tear up and tear down, handing out water. Maybe you secretly are a person who does things that I don't even get to know about that you do to advance the kingdom. We all do a little piece of it. And despite all of those things, we have nights of completely empty nets. The sun rises on us a little bit earlier than we may have expected. The challenge is that we always have to continue to say, because you said so, I will. May we know that God has called us to something that doesn't make sense. That others will see the miracle happening in a stinky pile of fish. But the real miracle is us continually saying yes to the one who said, He will be with us. But that on the horizon, the nets that we do cast will eventually overflow with the glory of God, whether we see the results of it or not. That God's timing may not feel right to us, but may we continually leave our boats behind and follow the call first, because He said so from now on. Let's pray. God, this morning may we leave behind the worldly miracle. May we not see the fulfillment in the personal gratitude, the personal growth and satisfaction, the advancement of our monetary value. May we not see that as the miracle of the story, but may we be bold in the face of something that our brains can't comprehend as the holiness envelops around us and the world seemingly becomes unglued. May we say yes to follow you. God, may your kingdom continue to be brought here. May we be fishers of men. May we continue to advance your kingdom that's set out so that all people may experience something and get a glimpse into your holiness. And all of God's people said, amen. Amen. Let's stand and sing our last song together.